And now, without any further delay, let's begin today's event. Once again, FDIC Part 370 Rule, a partnered approach to compliance, sponsored by Macro Financial Solutions and hosted by American Banker. I would like to introduce our moderator for today, and that is Solomon Din. Solomon, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Christina. Welcome to all the listeners here for today's webinar. It should be a great discussion about a very interesting topic related to regulators and data requirements that firms have to grapple with. This is an issue that American Banker and Financial Planning and all of the publications that cover the financial services industry here at Source Media have covered extensively. And of course, for each sector there are very specific requirements being put on institutions by financial regulators. If you followed FDIC Part 30 compliance rules and its development of this record-keeping rule, you're then fully aware of the challenges that covered institutions will face, even though the regulators are giving covered institutions 3 years to comply. Just when you look at the challenges that exist in corralling massive amounts of data that regulators will be looking for, it certainly will present both a technical and a record-keeping challenge for any institution. If you just consider calculating insured and uninsured amounts for each depositor alone. But on top of that, creating output files specifically for different categories, verifying signature cards for depositors, or certifying that institution's IT systems can be backed up 24 hours if a failure occurs. So, the question then, when the FDIC starts auditing financial institutions, how will your firm reach compliance? So, with that in mind, we have the good fortune of having Macro Financial Institutions, which is based out of DC and also has offices in Tennessee, to speak today about the RegTech solutions that the firm has developed both in data bridge and rules calculation engines, case management and reporting tools, an entire tool set, so that firms that will be facing this challenge can manage this challenge. So joining me today on this call as a team from Macro Financial Solutions, we have Elwin Thompson, who is a solutions architect at Macro Financial, Joe Savekos, who oversees large software application development, and Todd Hager, who's the Vice President of Strategy Innovation and Quality Solutions at Macro. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I'm looking forward, as we all are, to hearing about this solution to this very wide and broad challenge being put forward by the FDIC to covered institutions. Without further ado, I think, Todd, you'd like to begin your presentation.
Oh, great. Thank you, Solomon. We appreciate it. And welcome to Macro Financial Solutions, the FDIC Part 370 webinar. Let's go ahead and get started. So here's the agenda for today, and we'll cover some of the latest Part 370 updates. We'll talk a bit about the data and insurance determination, then the broker addendum, and finally, why performance matters when you only have 24 hours to complete your tasks. We'll finish off with how this can be accomplished with your team, with our team, and or with a partner's team. So jumping right in, we've got the three folks that Solomon was kind enough to introduce today. I am Todd Hager, and I am joined by Joe Savekos, our regulatory expert, and Elwin Thompson, our solution architect. And we, along with our team, have over 35 years of insurance determination work in our midst. So we know it from the inside. So Macro Financial Solutions is part of Macro Solutions, a leading technology, strategy, and management consulting firm based in Washington, D.C. Macro's clients include financial regulators like FDIC, SEC, and PBGC. Our team understands FDIC's tools and techniques involved in small and mid-sized bank closure procedures, much of which underpins the large bank requirements in Part 370. We're quality and security certified. We're also very comfortable commingling applications development with services delivery. Now, a lot of folks are talking about building bolt-ons to their existing systems to address the requirements of Part 370. We understand the pitfalls of engaging systems teams who don't understand the regulatory compliance requirements, especially FDIC compliance. It's more than just systems. It's about the data, really, and specifically good record keeping. So we've been doing this for years, as I said, and we're using a modern tool set with lessons learned from our experience. A much lower risk approach for complete compliance. We really just want you to be ready. So I'm going to hand it over now to Joe, who's going to help us understand the rule set and some of the recent changes. Joe?
Thank you, Todd. Just as a quick refresher for those on the phone or new to FDIC Part 370, it covers institutions that have over 2 million accounts. It became effective in April 1st, 2013, with a window of 3 years to become compliant, which means compliance is required by 2020, a little over maybe a year and a half from now. The emphasis on the insurance determination does include both technology play in addition to record-keeping plays. So as a result, things like signature cards, being able to identify the same piece of data within multiple types of deposit and customer systems has to be completed. In addition, we have been monitoring the ABA calls associated with Part 370 and have analyzed the recent IT Functional Guide update, version 2.1, which included a broker addendum, and have incorporated that within our solution. What we have here on the next slide is the FDIC conceptual flow. FDIC actually put it in a horizontal pattern. We chose to make it more of a flow down so that you can see where we're starting in terms of the customer information systems and deposit systems. Now, we understand for these large covered institutions that there can be many of these systems with very similar types of data, but the data may not actually be in the same form or format. So what the rule requires is that we combine that data to find a single source of truth for the individual accounts. There is a data transfer routine to actually get it into our deposit calculation engine where we run the actual rule set the FDIC has propagated, and then have a data transfer to FDIC. The FDIC data transfer has been defined in terms of flat file accounts. In addition, an alternative record-keeping entity report is optional per the rule set. In the components identified in the rule, we've put it into 7 kind of distinct steps where we go through data legacy cleanup. So that would be as merger and acquisition activities occur. You bring on new institutions. Once again, the data may not exactly be in the same format. A data extraction activity, and then coming into the actual transformation of data that can be ingested for the deposit calculation engine. Our solution handles both 360.9, which major institutions are already required to be compliant with, in addition to the 370 data sets. So depending on where the institution is in their compliance activities, we can actually start and do testing for deposit calculations based on those data sets. I mentioned data standardization in terms of common codes and identifying outliers. That would be where perhaps a Social Security number or a tax ID for some reason would not associated with an account, where we would have potential matches of names, trying to identify the actual individuals associated with the accounts to make the insurance determination. We also run through the reports required by FDIC, which are the actual flat file outputs, in addition to identifying exceptions associated with the data so that they can then be corrected. One very important item concerning the FDIC Part 370 is that the actual data calculation must be completed within 24 hours because of the one-weekend bank closing process. And now I'll hand it off to Suleiman for our first polling question.
Thank you. Yes, we will actually have 2 or 3 polling questions during the presentation. So for those of you out there, you have this quick poll question here. Which elements of your Part 370 compliance work are currently being done within your institution? The data quality, insurance determination, exceptions reconciliation, or reporting. We'll give a few seconds to get your answers in before we turn to the results. Okay, let's see the results here. So data quality is the leading factor that's being done within institutions here. So I'm hoping the team at Macro finds that a result in line with your expectations, or are you guys surprised by that?
That makes sense. That's what we're hearing with the banks that we're interacting with, is data quality is the biggest concern.
And that probably has the longest timeline associated with it to become compliant.
Great. Let's go on then to the next slide. Joe, I think that's yours. We're just going to hand that off now to Elwin.
Yes, actually goes to Elwin now.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elwin Thompson, and I am the CFR Part 370 Solution Architect at Macro Financial Solutions. Joe just introduced us to the expected components that FDIC estimated it would take to become compliant. These components, data extraction, data aggregation, data standardization, are all familiarly summarized as ETL for extract, transform, and load in this industry, or organized in different sequences like ELT, or some people are experimenting with data lakes. But in the baseline product of DICE, there are 3 types of these kinds of ETL processes that ship with the product. All support flat file load through a web browser, but also through our APIs behind the browser, which are exposed as XML or JSON HTTP web services. Starting with Part 370 at the top, one may be interested in loading data already in the 370 format to validate your output using our validation routine. Or if you already have a pristine, high-quality data set, DICE will perform the insurance calculations for you if you'd like to leave that up to a separate algorithm. There is not much transformation happening here, likely because it's already in the 370 output format as input. But it does get validated, and it's also calculated as well should you need those business rules run. Working down to the second bullet, a more likely scenario for covered institutions or CIs that must comply with this rule is that they already have their data in or close to the 360.9 format, because if they must meet 370 and they have more than 2 million accounts, we can pretty much assume that they are not far off, if not already required to implement 360.9, which is enabled at 2 billion in deposit accounts and at least either 250,000 deposit accounts or 20 billion in total assets. Second, 360.9 consists of 5 files, where loading these through the browser or API validates, transforms 360.9 to 370, including moving things like moving brokers to the pending file and at the same time calculating the insured and uninsured amounts on that transformation. 360.9 is an example of what we label data bridge. Really anything that is loading data into DICE, you may hear Macro refer to as such. The third bullet down, the pass-through entity load, is a capability that transforms the extended broker file, that file from 19 to 29 fields in the ITFG, transforms it to the 370 format, performing matching on government ID and calculations at the same time per the recent guidance from the ITFG version 2.0 draft and the ITFG version 2.1. Lastly, at the end of the slide, we do expect that not many CIs can provide their data in these formats by default. And while DICE does do the validation for you, the errors are not being corrected as part of the baseline product. Those come as a service for macro for each covered institution we work with, where we provide our custom data management services as an extension to DICE. So now for our first demonstration today, I will load both 370 and 360.9 files and walk you through the basics of the system, which we're spending less time on today so we can focus on the new features. So to begin, first I will load the 370 format as input and take a screenshot of the results to compare against 360.9 loading, which we will do afterwards. This exercise is meant to showcase our commitment to repeatable results, no matter what format your data set is transformed from. And you'll see with both, upon calculation, and I'm going a little faster than we did in the first webinar just because we've been through this before, but I will take a screenshot here just so that we can keep for record the 31 customers, 44 accounts, 13.8 million insured out of the total of 17 million. And so I'll just hold this over for a minute, and I'll immediately move on to loading our 360.9 data set, assuming we're familiar with the standard. And this is the first ITFG version 1.0 data. We created our own test data set based off of that. So again, need any explanation afterwards? To make the 360.9 format convertible to a 370 output format, Macro has extended 2 of these files with a custom field to allow us to make accurate ownership right capacity, or for short determination, and also to allow for to accommodate for the data set for an uneven allocation when it applies to multi-owner or beneficiary accounts. And so now that we have calculated both, I'll quickly set these side by side just to show that we get the same insurance calculation regardless of input. The same information regardless of what format your input is in, 360.9, 370, or if we were transforming a custom data set unique to your institution, we pride ourselves in making the output the same, because it's the same information just coming in a different format. For those that are new, I'll take us to the final step of your first 24 hours after the initial calculation and just give a quick walkthrough. At this point, all 4 required output files are available for download, and the deposit insurance coverage summary report as defined by recently out in the ITFG version 2.0 and draft and 2.1 final is also available with drill downs so that you can go in and look at the accounts related to each ownership right capacity. All of the data is available in table format in the system, and you'll encounter such features as twisties, drill downs all over the place to get into the information. Every record is updatable, create, delete, edit, features such as we'll walk over how to do that when we get into the case management and the approve and review process. But most importantly, after loading and calculating the insured and uninsured amounts, these are what the rules are determining based off of the Rule 330. And all these files are all you need to comply, downloading all 4, and then outputting the deposit insurance coverage summary report we saw earlier are the outputs it takes to be certified to the rule. So this ends our first demo, showcasing our commitment to support transforming the same information in different formats into the same 370 output, and also the same calculations required by FDIC to comply. So now I will take off screen share and advance the slides. Okay. So our data management team at Macro practices the Data Management Association's database management body of knowledge, all together shortened as DMBOK, DMBOK. In the DICE product, as well as our services, we take a disciplined approach to making your covered institution's data compliant with the rule. And also so that if we're working with partnerships or other data management organizations within your institution, this is a common methodology that would guide us all working together and collaborating. The first step in the FDIC components, which we skipped for the sake of showing a happy day scenario with our first demo, is what you encounter first when using the system. We expect there are going to be plenty, likely, data quality issues the first time you try to load input into DICE. And ship with the baseline product, DICE performs 360.9 and 370 validations on things called dimensions, which are defined by DMBOK, but the dimensions are just categorizations of what is being measured. Simply here, we're validating at things like completeness, which is whether something is required or not, integrity as an example, whether any accounts in the system do not have owners. Something suspicious might be going on, especially if you're investigating fraud, among some others that you see there. And so with this, we'll continue into our next demo just to showcase validation, which we haven't done before. I'll switch over to screen share. Okay. So to demonstrate our validation of data quality, I will load a stress data set into the system. And the stress data set contains a record for each data criterion that will not pass quality review per, in this case, because I'm loading 360.9, the 360.9 rules. But if I were loading 370, it would validate against the 370 rules or also our extensions and the ITFGs. So we do allow calculating if there are errors to allow the user to understand better the data as it is processed by DICE. However, it's not recommended we don't recommend depending on these results as an official calculation if there are no errors, because as an example, if a person is missing accounts or accounts are orphaned, then the insurance calculation can be pretty different once the data is corrected and submitted to the system. Currently, the errors generated are those issues required to be 100% compliant with the rule, as well as everything required for DICE to make an accurate insurance calculation. So errors that appear in this report, they do not get corrected with the baseline product, which is where Macro does offer the data management services to come in and correct these based on custom parsing and transformation rules we can use for your institution. A lot of what can be seen, and there's quite a lot here at a low level in a CSV file for a data analyst to investigate and correct. But in summary, what you're seeing here are required and not required completeness checks. These are validation checks, making sure codes match, and a full line item by line item list of where in your input these issues are occurring so that they can be corrected. We also perform validations on the 370 and the pass-through entity file load. Not to be demonstrated this time, as we're running a little bit shorter on time, but you can rest assured that macro is very comprehensive and disciplined in covering the wide range of dimensions that cause data quality issues and reporting on them for the record-keeping compliance requirements. But to summarize, we validate to the ITFG 370, the 360.9 rules, as well as custom macro validations that we require and required to make accurate calculations, basic things like principal, interest, whether or not somebody has passed within the past 6 months, and anything else common across our clients. While the DICE baseline product isn't correcting these for you, we do provide the validation output format for you, and as a custom service, we can go in and correct those. And so now we'll move further into the system and work with the data after it's been initially loaded. So what we have not mentioned yet, and the primary reason for DICE being online accessible through a web browser instead of a single database responding to SQL commands or working off a spreadsheet where the calculation algorithm is run, is that by developing the system with an online interface, we enable much faster collaboration and review cycles, especially after the initial 24 hours that you usually encounter this kind of activity post 24 hours. With online access, every user sees the same calculations regardless of what version of a spreadsheet they have. Literally from the rule, a comment to the rule, bank records on trust accounts are often in paper form or electronically scanned images that require a time-consuming manual review. DICE has included features for enabling online manual review of this information, which is gathered after closing day. Even though this is expected to be mitigated by the covered institution maintaining and calculating this data during regular operations, information from third parties and joint accounts without signatures, they still require a manual review if the covered institution does not have this data at closing, or they have a waiver in place where they're not responsible for it, or it's just not part of their third-party agreement. The ITFG has also included a step, currently step 7 in the ITFG version 2.1 called Review, Approve, and Release Holds for Insured Amounts, where FDIC will use the covered institution's IT system to review and approve calculations from information provided by third-party customers, the brokers, or others post 24 hours for calculating insurance. This review and approve cycle has remained throughout the ITFG versions in at least review and approve form. And not much has been elaborated beyond the rules behind this workflow, like who the actors are, what privileges do they have in reviewing and approving, is there such thing as a reject, or are these things getting assigned out to people to work on. And so DICE has included with the baseline product an interpretation of case management and workflow from the ITFG's mention of this process that also incorporates Macro's experience in supporting and developing the closing process and implementing those IT systems. So we do anticipate that we have developed a core workflow common to any closing institution that would need to leverage this process, which we'll demonstrate next. So we'll demonstrate the controls case management puts in place to enable this process now. Just switching screens. Okay. So I'll begin by showing you that this is a preloaded screen of the 360.9 data. We had loaded it previously. I also have it here, just to skip the loading process. So with DICE case management, one is allowed to search, assign records for inputting new information, search, assign, and once editing that information, we always perform recalculation in all the appropriate spots when you change any record, and we take them through an audited second-level review cycle that keeps the separation of duties and controls and balances in check when working amongst a team that's processing this data. So as an example of a manual review, we'll assume a missing account has been found manually and just add their information to Ms. Beatrice Allen here. And sorry for the field name. We literally use the 370 field names are what we use with the baseline product, but those are configurable to your IT systems if you prefer something prettier. As you can see, I'm not allowed to enter anything. I can't edit the customer. I cannot add or delete anything with Ms. Allen. To edit any records in the system, they must first be assigned. And as of now, anyone can make assignments to anyone in the system just to make it more flexible across our customers. Every workflow assignment and status change is audited, so there is a history of anyone attempting to hide work or game the system. And within DICE, assignment is made not just at the customer level, but when you make an assignment, it cascades to all linked records across all the other files so that other users of the system cannot cause confusion or accidentally edit works in progress that you may be working on yourself, because that could significantly alter the insurance calculation. So now that I've assigned the customer to myself, I can edit them, and DICE has performed the assignment, allowing me to go in and add account. I can also edit the data across all of their records. Maybe give them a balance. And so as we can see, this account has successfully been added into Ms. Allen, and the insurance calculation has been adjusted. So in the single right capacity, she's still not insured over $250,000, and the right uninsured amount has been allocated. The workflow for review is as straightforward as we can make it, and as streamlined as linear as we can make it to support the bank closings. Customers and their linked records are assigned for editing. They're submitted for review, as I can do here by moving to pending. And ultimately, they can either be approved or rejected. They can only be approved by a peer, which is why it's disabled for me here. So I'm allowed to reject my own work, which I'll take here just to decline my own work. So this was a quick demonstration of the product's baseline workflow that we find is going to be common across the institutions that need to go through this process. We use this for manual review of any records, especially those that have been loaded as part of the pass-through entity file fiduciary process, which we'll walk into next. So Macro understands the process and third-party agreement barrier to implementing this addendum may weigh heavier than the technology required to automate it, especially getting the third parties to respond within the first 24 hours on what will likely be a weekend. However, you can rest easy with this technology. The DICE baseline product launches you into compliance with 370.4b, the alternative record-keeping requirements from a technical perspective. The broker addendum was introduced in the ITFG version 2.0 draft and encompasses more than just brokers, but anything that is a custodial type of account representing any third-party owned beneficiary or participant information. So Macro has implemented ITFG version 2.1 of the broker addendum pass-through entity process, and where we have found a few instances of the guide not explicitly defined, we have extended it with our own explicit rules for our internal functional requirements. Just a few examples here. We have encountered and formalized this as DICE functional requirements. The new accounts type created from the broker's account, the fiduciary account, propagates the product category. How we avoid ID clashes if you're purely using SSNs for the CS unique ID field. And how to get the exact same calculation results as listed in the ITFG guide, where that screenshot on the right is a snippet of, I think, about 10 or more pages of this scenario it takes to do the broker scenario as outlined in the ITFG guide, which we'll be demoing next. So for the sake of time today, we're covering time 1 through 3 of the guide, times 4 through 5, and these are those pages of tables and further in the ITFG for the broker addendum. We've summarized those tables of the sequence of data loads and the calculations it takes to do all of this into ITFG time 1 and 3 in a single slide here, just to help understand what's going on. These are the same times as what's in the ITFG, but we've condensed them so that we can walk through them in a demo. In time 1, an initial file is loaded that contains Anytown broker's account. It is not insured or uninsured, but placed in the pending file because the account represents multiple customers of Anytown broker that are unidentified, as that information is owned by the Anytown broker third party. In time 2, Anytown broker theoretically provides the PTE file, the paternity file, of the customers belonging to this account and their share of the principal within the broker's account. And that file is then loaded. Matching is performed by the government ID, and calculation is ultimately run in time 3, applying the insured and uninsured amounts. As the file is loaded in time 2, there are 2 customers that should be matched by government ID. A new account is created to represent each of their ownerships for the principal provided in that PTE file. And there are also a couple of other effects to the load that take place, which we will walk through as well. They're not very apparent just by speaking to them. And so now I'll begin to share screen again. Okay, and so we'll begin with customer Marcy. These customers already exist in the system from the initial ITFG data set, and I'll just browse to each of them on screen. Marcy will be impacted. You can expect to see an additional account added within her single right capacity here, and we'll see the insured and uninsured amounts get allocated correctly. XYZ as well will be impacted by this load. XYZ Corporation is also part of the original ITFG data set, and it's also what is in the broker scenario. And so an additional account will be populated here. So special attention is to notice there's 2 accounts. There will be a third one populated as a result of this file load. In the pending file, we have 1 pass-through account that needs to be accounted for. This is the same Anytown account mentioned in the ITFG guide with data matching the guide scenario. Of important notice is to pay attention to the account ID, DP account identifier, and the principal, DP current balance, and the DP total PI. And so we do offer incremental loads, and here we're loading the PTE file as part of this scenario. No loads have been completed or initiated yet. I'll now load the file containing the 2 customers. Again, this is a simulation of time 2 in the ITFG guide's broker addendum scenario. And so I have just loaded the initial file, and I'll begin the calculation next. This is that 19 to 25 file. The data's in the system. Now I need to run the calculation on it. Okay, and so I've run calculation. Oh, or maybe I have not. One moment. Okay. We'll begin a new scenario. And so I will just be reloading the join files. I may not have set up the previous scenario correctly. But now you can see what the setup takes. Now we'll load the PTE file once more. Okay, and so the file has been loaded, and now the customers have been loaded as well as the 1 broker account. And so clicking the calculate button will determine the insured and uninsured amounts next. And so we see that 10,000 insured and 240,000 uninsured have been allocated. To see where this has gone, I will go to the actual broker's account next in the pending file and look at its associated accounts. And so this is the Anytown broker, which the accounts have been successfully loaded for. Here we see the accounts in the account file that were created. I can click on the account ID. I can drill down and see the customer that these belong to. And these are previously the Marcy and the XYZ Corporation customers that we had just touched on. And so here we can see that Marcy's $150,000 share in the broker account with the same account number has been added, and the insured and uninsured amounts have been allocated. As per the ITFG guide, the broker's, the pending files account has been insured separately after this initial first 24-hour calculation, which we saw previously, and as well with the XYZ Corporation. Here we see that the third account showing their interest in the broker account has been added into their business capacity, and this has been insured on top of their previously insured amount from the first 24 hours. So they still have a maximum insured SMIDIA standard maximum deposit insurance amount of $250,000, and the $90,000 has become uninsured from this additional $100,000 account that's been added. The Anytown record has also been impacted. This is the actual broker's account, basically the top level account, and so this is one of the side effects of the load, is that per the ITFG, an account with a null ORC has been created that has been added into Anytown broker's capacity, the null capacity specifically. And finally, you'll see that in the pending file, we do decrement the current balance, and once that reaches zero, this file is ultimately moved into that account we saw previously, where you're burning down the pending file and everything's accounted for and shows up in the account file. And so that was a handful of fiduciary, previously called the broker processing, pretty quickly. So luckily you can go back at half speed and see exactly where everything went and what was loaded. Macro expects this implementation of the broker addendum to support not just the legacy broker processing guide posted online and leveraged to date, but also the extensions defined in the ITFG guide to support alternative record keeping. And for the sake of time, I believe I'm a little bit over. So this is our technology stack. In summary, it is all open source. We are agnostic to cloud, so whether the product is deployed into Amazon, Google, or Azure, or you prefer it with an on-premise deployment in your own institution's data warehouse or your own bare metal servers. This technology stack pulled together allows us really to deploy in any kind of configuration. So we're very well able to support that. The Postgres SQL database is with any bank, usually there's something SQL Server or Oracle based, and that's fully supported as well. Our performance capabilities and results, we have performed official performance testing, and we will list those results here quickly for the sake of time. And what we have done is we have measured a scenario of loading 1 million, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million accounts, and this isn't just the account file, but 30 million accounts, which means 30 million customers, 30 million in the participant file, so 30 million across the files. And so this chart represents the top level line is the total load time. The blue line is what it takes to do the load, which is done through a web browser a couple hundred miles away from the data center that this data is getting loaded to. And the green line represents our calculation services. So the entire architecture is backed by a suite of microservices, and so for every 10 million accounts, we tune the system and we increase these microservices to support your need and scale the system elastically with configuration at a button. And real quickly, yep, that ends the performance and my walkthrough of our new features to date. And so at this point, I'll pass it back to Todd to close us out.
Great, thanks, Elwin. I appreciate that, and thank you for the demonstrations. So our solution, just to reiterate then, our solution consists of the Part 370 compliance products, including the data bridge, the rules engine we're calling DICE, and case management, including the output reporting for FDIC. And then all the services you'll need for compliance, from readiness assessments, data quality, data aggregation, insurance determination, exception handling, and reporting. So all of our products and services are underpinned by our ongoing support, including a help desk support. We also offer audit support where we can be there with banks the week prior to an FDIC visit and for that week of the FDIC visit to help prepare reporting and ensure compliance. Additionally, we offer semi-annual updates. So as your data changes, as Elwin was saying, sometimes with mergers and acquisitions or updates in depositor systems, there's a need to refresh and get back into sync with your data. We can be there with you for that as well. We offer that generally on a semi-annual basis. And we can work with your services partner, we can work with your product partner, and we can even work with your internal team to provide whichever of these products or all of the products and or the services that you may need to be compliant. You can also use that rules engine that Elwin demonstrated just to test your own team's work and simply assess your readiness. So we're going to, Suleiman, hand it over one more time for a polling question.
Sure. And so we will, and we have a couple of questions that we'll get to right after we finish this up. We've got one more poll here. This question, which products and or services is your financial institution currently in the market for? Part 70 compliance review, data quality readiness, data management tools such as Data Bridge, insurance determination rules engine or DICE, and independent validation of in-house insurance determination. So we'll take a couple of seconds to tabulate results. Okay, let's see those results. So data quality readiness, Todd, that seems to be the priority for potential clients and firms who are looking at this data challenge.
Okay, that echoes, I think, what we saw in the last poll. Right.
Yeah.
It sort of is similar to what we saw in the last poll. So that's good. Great, thank you, Suleiman. So we've got, let's see, just to wrap it up here, we, again, just to reiterate, we've been doing this for years, and we are using a modern tool set, as you saw, with those lessons learned from experience. Our approach is much lower risk for complete compliance. We just want you to be ready. So lastly, I want to just reiterate the offerings one more time. We've got the Part 370 Readiness Engagement on the website. That's www.macrofinancialsolutions.com. Also out there is information about the deposit data quality and compliance services. You've seen the rules engine with DICE. And before we get to your questions, I just want to be sure to leave you with our contact information as well, too. And please feel free to reach out to any of us. We want you to be prepared and fully compliant by April 2020. So thanks again. And Suleiman, I think we have a few questions that came in from the audience. I'll go ahead and hand that to you.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, and thanks again, guys, for participating. And for the listeners on the webinar here, I just wanted to remind you that if you were taking notes, we will be including this presentation in our follow-up emails with all the attendees who are part of this webinar today. So you will be receiving that in the very near future. So if you've been taking studious notes, good for you. You'll have some backup material to refer to. Todd, Joe, and Owen, there's some questions here. I want to start off with one. I think there are some similar questions related to format conversion. So just to try to bridge that, there are different formats here, regarding data. Does the platform then convert from, for instance, from 370 to 370 from any format, or if the data is already in 360.9 format, does the user then need to convert to 370 format? for it to be applicable in your rules engine.
Elwin, we'll hand that to you.
Okay. So we showed examples of loading just the 370 format, which we found an interest where those that already had their own data management services can convert it into 370, but would rather use DICE for the calculation part. The 360.9 transformation that we did earlier, for any other institution that's already in the 360.9 format, we expect to be able to reuse that transformation that we demoed a few times. For custom, anything that's not one of those two, the platform, the baseline product doesn't automatically convert to 370 for you. That's where we offer the data management services, where this product would be extended with an extra button next to the 360 and 370 with whatever you call your standard format, so that we can have a system-to-system transformation. Here we were doing flat file loads and transforming those, but system-to-system transformation, or if you wanted to upload a custom format, that's where the custom data management services come in, where we would transform it to 370 for you. So with the demonstrations today, the 360.9 format is an example of a known format that gets transformed into 370, but if it's anything custom, that's why we have the data management services available.
All right. Elwin, if I can then follow up with another technical question from the audience, I guess this is related to integration. Can the rules engine provided by Macro Financial work or be run within a user's or institution's data center?
Yes, it can. We're largely based on as long as they're virtualized, or it doesn't matter to us, virtualized or physical Linux servers. So Red Hat and Ubuntu are what we have developed and tested on already. So any bare metal server facility that you own, if you would prefer that be on premise, even if it's a virtualized environment, is supported, as well as if you're ready for cloud, we do provide cloud hosting as well, which we're Amazon native, but we would also support deploying and operating this in any cloud platform for you.
All right. Todd, I know we're sort of near the end of our time here, so I wanted to ask you sort of a question just related to our poll results that we saw. Just from your experience, and from the firm's experience consulting, obviously, on this subject, what's your perspective on how ready firms are in terms of the data that they have right now? I mean, what as a firm, what are you guys seeing in terms of data quality, in terms of data structure, and in terms of data organization and management? Are most institutions at a point where they can sort of comfortably hand off some of these tasks to your tool set and collaborate with you guys, or is there a little more prep work that needs to be done from your perspective?
That's a great question, Suleiman. We've encountered a variety of environments out there in our analysis with banks, and a whole variety of different states of data. So we recognize that it's a challenge, and we're finding more often than not that banks are really challenged to be able to pull in all of those depositor and customer systems into one place. And it's critically important because all of that data must be aggregated into one data set to be able to run through a rules engine, to be able to do a valid insurance determination, as far as FDIC is concerned. So it's a big task. And so some of the folks that we're working with are planning to do their own activities, but they're looking for help in getting the data ready. So we've been involved in that. Others are planning to do that on their own and just simply work with us in terms of prepared data and moving forward. But again, we're seeing a variety of folks out there. For the financial institutions on the phone who are feeling maybe like their data is not quite ready, you're not alone. I guess that's the best way I can leave it for you, Solomon.
Yeah, no, definitely, it's a challenge. I think again across the financial services, the different sectors that are facing, sort of data requirements being put on them by regulators as they want to sort of do more targeted audits of records inside institutions. I think we're just past the 3 o'clock mark, so I want to again thank your whole team, Todd, Joe, and Elwin from Macro Financial for participating today and for presenting this great presentation on the tool set that your firm has developed. And again, to everyone who participated and listened in on today's webinar, if you were, just to reiterate one more time, if you were taking notes and you want to have this material, we will be making it available to you in a follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you, gentlemen, again for participating today. Great talking to you guys.
Thank you, Solomon.